At some point in this bulletin, we brought you a report about a crisis meeting convened by President Bola Tinubu over rising food insecurity, which is jeopardizing the lives of citizens across the country. Well, on Monday this week, thousands of residents of Kano in the northwest and Mina in the north central tripped into the streets to make their feelings known about the situation. Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, has been assuring Nigerians of government's commitment to finding an enduring solution to the crisis. The minister said the situation was triggered by the forces of demand and supply.
Well, for what all the emerging restiveness about the spiraling cost of living across the country may represent, we are now being joined from Abuja by a former Kaduna State Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Jacob Mark. Good to have you on Newsday.
Thank you so much.
All right, so on the issue of food inflation and Naira depreciation, how would you assess efforts made so far to reduce it? And what about expenditures on previous palliative measures? How accountable are regional and state governments over this scenario, you think?
Well, perhaps we should start with a discussion on why there is food shortage. And for those of us in the north, it's not difficult to explain. Most of the lands that are used for cultivation, for planting and harvest of food crops, are no longer accessible. Small-time and big-time farmers have been driven off the land. People are actually been driven from their homelands where they cultivate food, either for commercial purpose or for sustenance purpose. And so there is a lot of pressure on what is available. And what is available cannot go around. This is the truth and this is the situation around the country, but particularly in the north. People who used to farm all year round no longer have the pleasure of walking to the farms at any time, at any given moment, whether during the dry season or the rainy season. Farming used to be all year round, with a lot of irrigation farming taking place during the dry season. But all of us know that insecurity has made it impossible for the ordinary farmer to go to the land, to access the land, to use the land to produce the food that is dearly needed by Nigerians. And so the pressure is much and is real. And the earlier government realizes and accepts this as a major cause of food shortage, the better, because discussions will now be targeted at curing the root cause, which is insecurity. When there is insecurity, every other thing collapses. You cannot talk of farming, you cannot talk of, even if some level of cultivation or planting is done, you cannot talk of transporting that which is produced to the major cities or to towns and villages, because it is common knowledge that farmers, some are made to pay taxes to bandits before they access their farms, and either to farm or to even harvest. You cannot access what you have planted. You cannot harvest and then transport to commercial centers. Markets have been raided. All the farm produce taken by bandits. And the story goes on and on. Whether you are in Zamfara or Sokoto or Katsina or Kaduna or Plateau, the story is the same. And God knows that the food basket of Nigeria has always been around the Benue and Plateau axis. These areas have been visited with violence, unnecessary and avoidable violence. And until we discuss this insecurity properly, we'll keep running around the goalpost without scoring any goal. So this is, to me, the primary issue that should be under discussion. I heard somebody talking about getting food reserves released. Where are the reserves? The truth remains that for years now, the farmers have been crying. Rural communities have been displaced. Those who make yam available have not been allowed to stay in their farms or their villages. Those who cultivate and make onions and rice easily available have been displaced from their farmlands. They cannot farm to even feed themselves. Talk less of having excess to sell to those who do not farm in the cities. So this is a challenge.
Now, you've identified, what you believe is a challenge that the Nigerian government needs to tackle. But concerning the protest in Kano and Niger State, the presidency, or should I say the federal government, believes that it is the opposition that is trying to destabilize the government. What's your take on this?
That is very childish and pedestrian. I don't subscribe to such commentary or belief, because the people who protested in Niger State and in Kano State, none of them displayed his party membership card. None of them claimed that he was acting on behalf of anyone or on behalf of any political party. And for God's sake, nobody needs to tell us that there is hunger in the land. For those of you living in the cities like Abuja and Lagos, it's easy for you to assume that all is well. It's easy to believe that an opposition needs to go to galvanize or inspire anybody to demonstrate about hunger. Hunger does not have a tribal inclination. Hunger does not have party alienation. Hunger does not have tribal marks. And until we address real hunger, these issues, these demonstrations, I'm sorry, but this is just the beginning. And I'm so scared because all of us, the elite, speaking English in the city, if you don't know, go to your village or don't just drive outside the capital city and attempt to buy something on the highway. The way the villagers look at you, you know that they are eyeing you as the problem. And until we realize that all of us are under an existential threat, we'll be toying with these issues. People are genuinely hungry. People who could take care of themselves, who could farm and feed themselves and their families, and use what they produce to send their children to school, are no longer able to do it because the land has been taken over. And they are not free to work with their hands to feed themselves. Sustainability has been taken away. And people are being made tenants in their homes. And people are talking about opposition, instigating people to demonstrate. Sorry, that is completely out of the way. And nobody in his right senses should even mention that. Because the reality we are facing is a dangerous situation where everybody driving a car, living in a house, managing to clothe himself and send his children to school is seen as the problem by the common man. And if I will explain it further, Nigeria exists like a long queue. Those of us that are wearing coat and tie, without belonging to any political party, you are seen by the common man, by the mass, the masses in the streets. They see you as the problem. Nobody knows who is in charge. Nobody wants to know who is the minister or the director general. No. The moment you are clean, you look well-fed, and you are driving a car, and your children are laughing and dancing, you are part of the problem as far as the common man is concerned. And I'm afraid of the situation where everybody will allow his temper, his anger, to push him into demonstration. And the earlier government understands this and interprets it properly, the better. Because Nigeria is growing into a country full of people with anger. Not anger that is based on political affiliation. No. Anger because men can no longer feed their families. Women wake up and see their children hungry without anything to put on the table for those children. My heart aches when politicians or those in government talk like this, because it shows that we are insensitive, we are completely disconnected from the Nigerian mass, and we are just living comfortably in the city and assuming that all other people are idiots. Nigeria is moving on a precipice of revolution, and we should not allow it to happen. Let's be kind. Let government show that it has empathy for the common person who is struggling day and night to feed himself. Many people have not given in to despair, and so have not taken arms, have not taken on to robbery, have not taken on to theft. Most Nigerians are decent people who want to feed themselves, who want to work hard to take care of themselves and their families. Now, when you work hard, and it is impossible to use what you have even produced for yourself, to feed your children, it becomes a product, an inspiration to anger. And this anger is growing and enveloping the whole country. And unless the government addresses this properly, we are giving birth to many men and many children of anger in the country. The government should not be speaking like that. Please, whoever is responsible for such statements should apologize to Nigerians. No political party needs to instigate anybody to express how angry the nation is becoming. And the multiplication I talked about is real. Just walk into any of the villages, into any of the communities outside the city center. You will know that anger is multiplying. And it is multiplying because hunger is real. And like I said, hunger has no tribal marks.
Very good, Mr. Mark. You've enumerated quite a lot here, but if non-state actors are dictating to farmers on accessibility to their means of livelihood and in general to the economy of the country, but how proactive are the regional governors themselves? Because the impression being created here is that there's a major disconnect between where these things are taking place and those who are supposed to be custodians of taking care of the people. Not just the federal government, but what about the state governments themselves? How have they performed, in trying to curb these incidents from happening? You talk about vigilantes and, security networks, but all that seems to have faded away, and we're not seeing much being done.
Well, personally, I pity a lot of the governors who took over after the last 8 years, because the central government appeared to have surrendered to the bands and bandits all over the country. The life and property of Nigerians was left at the mercy of those non-state actors who carry arms and run riot in any part of the country they choose. And nothing happens to them. Where were we when people were even being interviewed by Sheikh Mahmoud Gumi? Leaders of bands of serious, well-armed bandits, warlords in different parts of the country were being interviewed and recorded. And they were very open and they were very bold to say they are the ones doing what they are doing. And that unless they get what they want, they won't stop. We saw state governors negotiating with these guys. After the negotiations, they come out to say that they are not going to honor those negotiations because some things they are demanding for have not been done. And nothing happens to those people. So, truly, state governors, I see some of them as just mere tools that cannot do nothing. They can only back the security architecture of Nigeria, draws strength and deposits every source of power in the hands of the presidency. The federal government holds power, holds sway and control over the arms, the armed forces. And these are the people or the agencies that are supposed to handle insecurity. They are not under the governors. So when people say that the governors should do something, I ask, what can they do? A commissioner of police in your state takes instructions from the IG. We have seen conflicts in the past where a commissioner of police will be confronting the governor. We saw it when Nyesom Wike was governor in Rivers State. We saw it in Benue State. So, talk less of the army. These are the people that are constitutionally authorized to confront non-state actors. They are authorized and empowered and properly armed to confront non-state actors. But they are waiting, and they keep waiting for instructions from the top. And we have heard many of them say that they cannot do anything because those instructions have not been given. So it's a challenge to the federal government. And we are waiting to see, has the federal government given that directive Has the word gone out that these non-state actors that are so powerful, that are so arrogant, they are very bold, they come out in Katsina, in Zamfara, everywhere. They are there. They are not hidden. They announce their names. Their phone numbers are there. They display them and tell you to call them if you are bold. And they challenge you to come to the bush and meet them. In this country that has sent out troops to Liberia, to Somalia, we still have Nigerian troops serving in other countries to keep the peace. Yet, if it is not hypocrisy, how can we be sending troops to other countries when non-state actors are holding the country to ransom? So much so that we cannot produce food for our people. It's a challenge.
It is.
And we are calling on the president. This is the time to stop talking. Look, all this noise about corruption, economy, and whatever, unless you tackle insecurity, you have done nothing. You
Mr.
cannot
Mark,
do any development. You cannot do any economic program. Yes.
Now, according to the National Publicity Secretary of the APC, Felix Moka, he believes criticizing this administration is unfair, as they are yet to spend a year in office. He also says things are tough all over the world, with farmers in Europe also protesting, and he says the opposition should not just criticize, but provide solutions. So I'm going to ask you, what urgent measures do you think the government can take, at this time to tackle the spiraling inflation that is choking Nigerians to death?
Economically, this government came in and claimed it was going to hit the ground running. And this government, I'm sorry, Moka does not seem to remember that it was APC that was in government for 8 years, and it is APC that is in government today. So I don't see what he's talking about, barely a year. What does that mean? 8 years plus 8 months, that's 8 years and 8 months, for God's sake. They should not take Nigerians for granted. It's a continuation of their policies from 2015 to date. And it's not as if they came from out of one cloud. No, they have been in Nigeria. They promised Nigerians that all the issues bedeviling the country before 2023 were going to be addressed. And I believe that is why the majority of Nigerians, they claim, gave them the vote. So this excuse is not acceptable, and nobody should listen to that kind of explanation. And I know that the president of Nigeria is not going to say that. Maybe some political chess players can say such things, but the president of Nigeria cannot look Nigerians in the eye and tell them that he's new in this thing. He has been aspiring to be president maybe all his life. Particularly in the last 4 years, he campaigned all over the place and he told people that he has the answers to the issues. For God's sake, let us see action. Now, economically, you came on board and you immediately did some things. For instance, you withdrew subsidy on that major issue of fuel or petrol. And subsidy is an international arm of government. Silently, every government subsidizes what will help its citizens. Now, you took a decision to withdraw subsidy. Meanwhile, your country does not produce a single drop of petrol. You didn't make provisions for how you produce or how you provide petrol. Immediately that was done, everything, the price of every single item in this country skyrocketed. And the prices have continued to rise with every passing day. And all the promises and all the policies or things churned out by the government have failed. Let truth be told. Everything they have said they are going to do appears to be falling. And there is nothing wrong. For God's sake, if you started with removal of fuel subsidy, and it appears it is not working, everything you thought will happen. You said that by the time you start, you recover monies from subsidy, you plunge it into so and so, and then Nigerians in the villages will enjoy. Where is that money that has been recovered from subsidy? Have Nigerians truly being the better off without subsidy? These are the simple questions that people should answer. Or yes, those in government should address why their 2 plus 2 has not become 4. Because all the things they say, the benefits they promise that will come out of the removal of fuel subsidy, none has materialized.
All right, Mr. Mark,
we are told that
very good. Mr. Mark,
refineries will come on stream in December 2023. Nothing has happened.
Yeah, if I may come in, here now.
Instead of blaming the...
Yeah, if I may come in here now, the very thing you talked about, still on the issue of farmers and not being able to access their farms and everything, and we're still where we are in terms of food insecurity. But let's talk about enabling laws. The Constitution itself, is it very strong on acts of banditry, kidnappings, the very things that are leading us to where we are today? How proactive is the judiciary? I would like you to answer this in 2 minutes, please, briefly.
As far as insecurity is concerned, the Nigerian judicial system, the Nigerian law has adequate provision. There is nothing lacking. There is no lacuna as far as the penal laws are concerned. If the Nigerian government wishes to deal with this issue once and for all, it can be done within the ambits of the Nigerian law. Whether you talk of the penal code or the criminal code in the South, everything. We now have the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, which is a national act. Look, there is nothing that is lacking in the laws of Nigeria as regards handling and tackling the insecurity in the country. Everything is there. But are those operators, the operators of the law, are they willing? Are they in the same camp with the Nigerian people who just want to be left alone to live their lives? The poor man who just wants to go to his farm enough to feed his children, and have access to sell in the market. Are the operators of our laws willing to stay in course with the Nigerian masses? That is the question. You have situations where an attack will be going on in a particular place, villager will be crying and running, a military base will be there, not more than 1 kilometer away, but they won't do anything. These stories abound. Farmers have complained. They have to pay taxes to bandits before they can harvest their crops. And this has gotten to the authorities and to the security agencies. But most of the time, nothing is done. So the question is not the availability or the absence of law. No, the question is whether the operators of the law want to implement the law. The judiciary has done its part, and I can bear witness that most people that have been arrested have been sent to prison. But who will
very
arrest
well
who?
said.
When the kingpins, the warlords are walking around freely, going to the banks, depositing huge sums of money and withdrawing huge sums of money, transferring money into foreign accounts, and nothing is happening to them in this country.
Very sad situation indeed. Mr. Jacob Mark. Very sad indeed. Mr. Jacob Mark, former Kaduna State Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.